Hi, my name is Kira Rain. For 12 years, I sent my parents $30,000 every month and let them believe I was broke. They called me the unemployed daughter, pitted me at family dinners, used my money to build their lives, and still looked down on me. On my wedding day, not a single one of them showed up. No call. No message. Just silence. I thought that was the end of it, until I found out what they'd really been saying behind my back. And when they finally discovered the truth, that the house they lived in, the money they flaunted, the comfort they worshipped, was mine, that's when everything started to fall apart. So tell me, how far would you go to make your family see your worth? The city skyline looked almost painted behind the glass railings, soft light bouncing off the high rises. My wedding planner kept whispering something about timing, but my eyes were fixed on the front row, on the 6 empty seats marked family. Their absence was louder than the jazz playing from the speakers. I had spent weeks picking those chairs, matching them with pale roses and gold ribbons, even writing their names myself in careful script. Vera's name shimmered faintly under the sunlight. My mother's card sat perfectly aligned at the edge, beside the bouquet I had asked the florist to make just for her, white lilies, her favorite. I told myself she might surprise me, that maybe she'd walk in at the last minute with that soft smile she used to wear when she'd brush my hair before school. Malik stood near the altar, his dark suit crisp, his posture straight but tense. He had that quiet calm people mistake for indifference. I could tell, though. He kept glancing at the door behind me, maybe hoping for a sign of movement, a flash of my family walking in. The guests murmured softly, laughter mixing with the clinking of glasses. The clock on the rooftop terrace ticked toward 2:30. The wind tugged at my veil. Someone announced the ceremony would start soon. My maid of honor squeezed my hand before stepping into line. I smiled, the way people do when they don't want anyone to worry. By 2:32, I knew no one was coming. There was no Vera, no mother pretending to fix her lipstick in the mirror, no small talk about how expensive everything looked. I heard whispers. Maybe traffic, someone said. Her family's from Naperville, right? Every tick of my heel against the floor as I walked toward Malik felt like it echoed down a long hallway I couldn't escape. Every camera flash captured the same hollow space behind me where a family should have been. My chest tightened as I reached the aisle, alone. When the music began, it was like a wave of heat rushing up my neck. My steps felt heavy, and the sound of my shoes against the wooden floor might as well have been thunder. I kept my chin high, eyes fixed on Malik, who smiled as if to tell me it didn't matter. Maybe it didn't, but it did. If I look down, I won't cry. If I smile, maybe they won't ask, I repeated silently, forcing my lips upward. The officiant's voice blurred in and out, each word sliding past me like water down glass. I couldn't focus on the vows, only on those empty seats. When it was over, applause filled the space, polite and bright. My stomach felt hollow. Malik kissed my forehead softly before turning to shake hands. The planner ushered us toward the lounge for photographs, the photographer calling out poses like a conductor. Family first, she said automatically. Then, realizing the silence, she corrected herself. Maybe just the bride and groom for now. I excused myself a few minutes later, slipping into the quiet hallway near the elevator. My phone buzzed. Out of habit, I looked. At the top of the screen sat a notification from Facebook. Henrietta Calhoun had posted. My thumb hovered over it. The words cut sharper than any silence could. Some daughters marry rich and forget who raised them. But that's okay. We see your true colors now. Underneath, a row of comments from cousins and church friends. Thumbs up, heart emojis, a few lines about some kids just change. Not one person asked if it was true. For a moment, my reflection stared back at me from the phone screen. Dress flawless, lipstick perfect, eyes dead still. I didn't cry. Instead, I tucked the phone into my clutch, wiped the corner of my mouth with a napkin, and inhaled slowly through my nose until my heartbeat stopped shaking my ribs. Malik found me standing by the window. "You okay?" he asked quietly. I turned toward him, forcing a small smile. "Yeah," I lied. "Just needed a minute." He studied me for a second, then took off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders. You still looked radiant walking alone, he said, his voice soft. They made it clear, I murmured, half to myself. I walk alone now. We stayed like that for a while, watching the sun dip behind the towers. The music from the reception grew faint. People were laughing again, already moving on. Later that night, after we'd left the celebration, the hotel room felt too big. My bouquet lay on the dresser, petals bruised. Malik was in the shower, humming some tune under his breath. I stepped onto the balcony, still wearing the dress. The air was cool against my skin, carrying the smell of rain and car exhaust. Below, the traffic lights flickered red and green across the wet street. I sat there and opened my phone again, not to the post, but to the old message threads. Vera's last text. Don't forget to send the invite to Mom's church group. My mother's. We'll see how things go. Maybe. Months of small, clipped replies. Scrolling backward felt like peeling off old skin. There were photos from birthdays I had paid for, events I'd planned, dinners where they'd thanked everyone except me. Then I opened the folder I never showed anyone, a locked note labeled transfers. My thumb hovered over the screen. The list scrolled down for pages. Monthly bank wires, 12 years long. Each line identical, $30,000 sent to Calhoun household. 12 years of payments. 12 years of pretending they'd never asked for anything. I scrolled to the last entry. My breath caught. Even after all that, after the house renovations, after Vera's business bailouts, after Mom's medical bills, I remembered the last conversation we'd had before I stopped calling every week. Mom's voice had been tired but sharp. You think money fixes everything? You think that makes you better? And I'd answered quietly. I thought it made me part of the family. Now, sitting on that balcony, my dress pooling around me, I stared at the city lights and whispered into the wind, and they still thought I owed them more. A car horn echoed far below. I closed my phone and placed it beside the glass railing, its screen dark. Malik came out, towel around his neck, saying something about room service. I nodded, but my eyes were still on the skyline, the same one I used to show my parents pictures of, hoping they'd say they were proud. They never did.
I didn't sleep much that night.
After the ceremony and the reception, after the awkward hugs from well-meaning guests who didn't understand what was missing, after the doors had shut and the lights dimmed and the photos were snapped, I found myself wide awake on the hotel balcony, legs tucked under me like a child lost in thought. The sky was just beginning to soften from deep black to a shade of blue I hadn't seen since I was a teenager, sneaking out of the house just to sit on the porch and feel something different from the judgment inside. And that sky, somehow, made me reach for my phone again. I didn't scroll through wedding pictures. I opened the locked folder labeled transfers. The same one I had built year after year, entry by entry, like a ledger no one ever saw, but I carried it like a second spine. 12 years. Every month. $30,000 wired to my parents' household account through a shell LLC I created with a meaningless name to keep it anonymous. The name didn't matter. It was the silence they wanted more than anything. I'd never missed a payment. Not when I had the flu. Not when I broke my wrist in a car accident. Not even the month I lost my job briefly and had to borrow from my savings to make the transfer. Because I believed, no, I convinced myself, that it was love. That if I kept giving, one day, someone would call just to ask how I was doing, not if I could help cover the new furnace or fix the car or bail Vera out of another over-leveraged dream. The morning came too soon. I heard Malik shifting beside me inside the room, the soft hum of the shower starting. I went in after him. We dressed in quiet, and then sat across from each other on the balcony with 2 mugs of black coffee and the kind of silence that didn't need to be filled. He watched me for a long minute, then reached across the table and gently tapped the folder on my screen. Is that what I think it is? I nodded. For $0.3 million, I said without emotion. Give or take. Depends on the bank fees. His brow furrowed. They knew you were sending all that? I tilted my head slightly. They assumed someone was. I let them keep assuming it was someone else. He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. He was good at that, letting me have the floor when the silence was more revealing than the speech. I turned the laptop so he could see the breakdown. The line items were clinical: mortgage help, $90,000, medical expenses, $40,000, Vera Yoga Fund, $70,000. That last one still stung. She had come to me in tears years ago, sobbing about rent and failure and how she just needed one more chance to make something of herself. And I, the so-called dependent, made that possible without ever telling a soul. Back then, I thought it was a gift. Now I saw it for what it was. Hush money they didn't even know they were demanding. I remembered how I set it up at 26, sitting in a rental apartment with outdated wallpaper and an office chair that squeaked every time I leaned back. I had just gotten my first real promotion. I should have been buying myself a vacation or a better mattress. Instead, I sat up late at night drawing up the LLC papers and watching YouTube videos about how to create an anonymous business account. I named the company Linden Equity, a meaningless nod to the tree I used to climb in our backyard before the mortgage stress killed the joy in that home. I set the transfer date to the 5th of every month. Like clockwork. Like devotion. Like debt I didn't remember signing up for. And they never questioned it. My mother would sigh, "We're so lucky that investor helped again." Vera would nod and say, "They must really believe in us." No one asked who they were. I didn't offer. That was the dance. 2 years ago, I broke pattern. I drove to Naperville without warning, brought a lasagna I'd made the night before, the kind Mom used to request when I came home from college. I let myself in with the spare key I still had, though even then it felt like trespassing. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and bleach. I heard laughter from the other room. I paused when I heard my name. "She's still unemployed, right?" My mother's voice said, low but sharp. "Malik takes care of her. It's embarrassing." Vera laughed. "No wonder she never talks much. She's guilty." I stood there, lasagna cooling in my hands, until I turned around, walked back to my car, and drove an hour without the radio on. That was the day I nearly canceled the transfer. I hovered over the delete recurring payment button for 10 minutes straight. But I didn't click it.
Not then.
Because a small, stupid part of me still hoped they would eventually realize what I was doing. That the love I showed in silence would someday be louder than the lies they were telling behind closed doors. I told Malik about that phone call later that year, but I downplayed it, said it didn't bother me much. I hadn't admitted, even to myself, how much it tore something loose inside me. That was the moment I stopped needing approval and started needing distance. Now, the day after our wedding, that memory played in my mind like background static as Malik leaned forward and touched my wrist gently. "You sure you want to keep doing this?" he asked. I shook my head. "No." "You want me to say something?" I looked at him and smiled, small, tired, but clear.
"No."
I gave them everything. Let's see who they become when I stop. He leaned back, sipping his coffee. Fair enough. We spent the rest of the morning talking about our honeymoon plans, delaying them now, of course, not because of the family drama, but because Malik had taken on a new surgical schedule. I didn't mind. I was in no rush to escape. If anything, staying grounded made the decision feel more solid. That afternoon, once we got home and unpacked the last of the gifts, I sat at my desk and opened a new folder on my desktop. I named it The Undoing. Inside, I dragged over 3 files, the spreadsheet of all financial transfers, a PDF of the property title that I had purchased in full, and a transcript of the voicemail Vera left me last year demanding help with her PR crisis. Then I sat back, closed the lid, and felt something I hadn't in years. Still. There was no grand gesture, no emotional high. Just clarity. Cold and clean like fresh linen. That night, Malik made dinner, simple pasta with too much garlic. We sat on the couch, watched a rerun of a show we both loved, and didn't talk about the wedding or the family or the money. We just were. That felt like its own kind of luxury. Later, as I was brushing my teeth, I glanced at my reflection and said aloud, "I don't think I miss them." I didn't mean it to be cruel. It was just true. Before I walked away completely, I gave them one more chance, and they used it to humiliate me further. That night, after Malik had gone to bed, I sat on the couch in the dark with my laptop open, the light from the screen soft against the wall. The wedding photos were already circulating online. My mother's post had gathered more comments, people I hadn't seen since high school sharing their opinions about a woman they barely remembered. I should have ignored it, but instead, I opened a folder called Memories on my desktop and scrolled down until I found a file I hadn't opened in years. Dad's birthday, 2018. The thumbnail showed us all sitting around the dining table. I had filmed it on my phone, hoping to capture the laughter, maybe one of those rare moments when we looked like a family instead of a group of people pretending to be one. The moment the video started, the sound of clinking silverware filled the room. My father's voice, warm, patient, cut through the noise, thanking everyone for coming. I smiled without realizing it, but that smile faded when Vera's voice echoed through the speakers. "Well," she said, loud enough for the room to hush, "at least I pay taxes. Kira gets to sleep in while the rest of us hustle." The table erupted in laughter. Even Dad chuckled softly, shaking his head. Mom didn't say a word to stop her. The camera wobbled slightly. I could see my hand in the frame tightening around the fork. In the video, I smiled, polite, silent, small. I didn't defend myself. I never did. I just sipped my water and looked down at my plate, waiting for the noise to move past me like wind through trees. Watching it now, I wanted to reach through the screen and tell that version of me to say something. Anything. I paused the video at the frame where Vera's grin froze midair. The candles flickered in front of her. She looked so sure of herself, so certain she was the better daughter, the favorite, the one who earned her place. I used to envy her confidence. Now I just pitied it. I closed the file and leaned back against the couch. The air smelled faintly of garlic from dinner. Malik had left the lamp on in the hallway, its light spilling into the living room in a small triangle. I stared at that triangle and thought about all the times I'd tried to build bridges out of thin air. After that dinner 2 years ago, Vera had posted a photo of the evening online. Family means showing up for each other. The caption felt like a knife wrapped in silk. I clicked on another file, this one newer, titled Calhoun House Remodel. The video opened to Vera walking through my parents' renovated kitchen, giving a grand tour for her followers. "All thanks to the Calhoun legacy," she said, panning her phone toward the marble countertops and the chandelier I'd personally ordered and paid for. "Mom and I made it happen." Not a mention of me. Not a word. I remembered watching that video for the first time, sitting at my desk at work during lunch, staring at the screen while my coworkers chatted around me. Every detail, the paint color, the floor design, even the garden lights, had been my doing. I'd sent the contractor the payments directly, using that same anonymous LLC. "Beautiful house," one of the comments read. "You too deserve it." That was the day I stopped checking their pages altogether. The house was more than a gift. It was a lifeline. When Dad's health began to fail, I couldn't stand the thought of him living in that drafty old place. I had spent 3 months negotiating the remodel, calling builders, coordinating deliveries. I'd done it quietly, because Mom hated being told what to do, and Vera liked taking the credit. So I let them. I told myself that love didn't need recognition. It just needed proof. But love, I've learned, becomes something else when you start paying for it. It stops being love. It becomes a transaction. There was one conversation that kept replaying in my head. It was late one night after I'd transferred another large payment for the house repairs. I called Mom just to hear her voice. "Would you love me the same if I had nothing?" I asked, half joking. She laughed softly. "Don't be silly. A woman should always have a man who provides." It was meant as advice, I suppose. But all I heard was that love, in her world, was conditional. You were valuable only if someone else was taking care of you, or if you were taking care of them. That sentence had stuck to my ribs for years. I closed the old video, opened my email, and started typing. The words came fast. "Here's a receipt for every favor you claim credit for," I wrote. "Every Calhoun legacy you bragged about was a wire transfer from me. You've rewritten history, and I'm done letting you use my silence as consent. My hands hovered above the keyboard. I imagined their faces reading it. Vera pretending to be shocked, Mom deflecting with guilt. Then I imagined Dad, who probably would have sighed and told me to let it go. I didn't send it. Not yet. Instead, I opened the folder called The Undoing. I dragged the email into it, alongside the property deeds, the bank records, the screenshots of every post where they erased me. The folder glowed faintly on the desktop, waiting for the day I'd finally decide to click send. The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. I stood, stretched, and walked to the window. Chicago's skyline glittered under a thin haze, the streets alive with the hum of people who had somewhere to go. My reflection stared back at me, older than I remembered, stronger than I used to be. I thought about Dad again, about how he used to tell me that people rarely break in one day. It happens slow, he'd say, like a crack in glass. You don't notice it until it's all shattered. That voice echoed as I turned off the laptop. I walked to my bedroom, opened the closet, and pulled down a small cardboard box from the top shelf. The label read, "For when I give up." I didn't remember writing that, but the handwriting was mine. Inside were a few things I hadn't touched in years. A stack of old birthday cards for my parents, some photos, a charm bracelet from Vera that she'd bought during one of her sister bonding trips years ago. I set the box on my desk and looked at it for a long time. I didn't open it. Not yet. But just having it there felt like facing something I'd avoided for far too long. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my hands clasped in my lap, and said quietly to the dark, "When betrayal happens slow, it doesn't sting. It seeps. But one day you're drowning." And I realized, sitting there in the quiet glow of the city outside, that I was finally ready to swim for shore. They were warned. But still, a small part of me wondered if I was being too harsh, too final. 1 week had passed since the wedding, since the silence that stretched wider than any ocean I'd ever seen. Malik had gone back to work, and I spent the mornings answering emails I didn't care about, pretending life had resumed its normal rhythm. But nothing about it felt normal. The longer I ignored the tension, the heavier it sat on my chest. I kept replaying the same question. What if they really didn't understand what they'd done? What if, somehow, all the things they'd said and all the moments they'd chosen not to show up weren't cruelty, but confusion? Malik noticed me staring too long at the same spot on the kitchen counter. "You're thinking about them again," he said softly. "I keep wondering if they thought I was serious about cutting contact." He sighed. "Kira, they know. You don't owe them another conversation." "I know I don't," I said, twisting the ring on my finger. "But I want to believe that maybe they don't know how much it hurt." He set down his coffee. "If you need to see it for yourself, do it on your terms." That afternoon, I sat at my desk and typed out an email that took me nearly an hour to finish. I rewrote the subject line 5 times before settling on something that felt neutral enough. Brunch invitation, no speeches, no drama. The message was simple. I'd like to meet for brunch next Sunday. Just us 3. Mom, Vera, and me. No arguments. I just want to talk like family. I reread it 3 times before hitting send. Malik raised an eyebrow when I told him, "You're sure about this?" "I'm not sure of anything," I said honestly. "But I need to see what's left between us, if there's anything worth saving." He nodded, but I could see the worry in his eyes. "I'll be close by if you need me." The following Sunday morning was crisp, the kind of mild weather that makes people linger over coffee. I chose a small cafe in Naperville, one with soft lighting and quiet music. I got there early, ordered tea, and watched the door. 10 minutes passed. Then 25. Vera arrived alone, sunglasses still on, a bright red scarf tossed around her neck like she was walking into a photo shoot instead of a conversation. "Traffic was awful," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. I glanced behind her. "Where's Mom?" She avoided my eyes, pulling off her sunglasses. She didn't want to come. Said it might be too awkward. A dull ache started behind my ribs. I nodded slowly, tracing the rim of my teacup.
Right.
Too awkward to face her daughter, but not awkward enough to post about her daughter online. Vera forced a small laugh. She didn't mean any of that, Kira. You know how she gets when she's upset. She's been upset for years, I said quietly. The waitress came over and took Vera's order, mimosa and a fruit plate. The clinking of glasses filled the silence. I tried to keep my voice even. I wanted to meet because I'm tired of this distance. I'm not asking for an apology, Vera. I just needed to know if there's still a part of this family that cares about truth more than image. Vera leaned back, folding her arms. You're reading too much into everything. Mom's just protective. She's old-fashioned. Protective? I almost laughed. She told Malik's mother I was unstable, that he's the only reason my life holds together. Vera blinked, caught off guard. She said what? I pulled out my phone, scrolled to Malik's text from that morning, and turned the screen toward her. It was a screenshot of a voicemail, Henrietta's voice, clear as daylight. We've done everything for Kira, but she's delicate. You know how the youngest ones are. Malik's the stable one. He keeps her grounded. The cafe suddenly felt smaller. Conversations from nearby tables blurred into a low hum. Vera looked at me, then at the phone, and said, she didn't mean it like that. I felt my throat tighten, not from anger but from something colder, confirmation. She never means it, right? It just happens to come out that way every time. Kira. I raised a hand. Don't. You've defended her my whole life. You call it loyalty, but it's denial. She's not fragile. She's cruel when she's afraid of losing control. Vera stared at her mimosa. You know she loves you deep down. If that's love, then maybe I don't want it anymore. I took a deep breath, folded my napkin neatly, and stood. Tell her this is the last time I ask to be understood. Vera didn't move. I left a 20 on the table for my tea and walked out. The sound of my heels against the tile echoed behind me, each step clearer, stronger. The drive back to the city was quiet. I kept both hands on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead, and let the numbness turn into clarity. Love shouldn't feel like constantly proving your worth. When I got home, Malik was waiting by the window. He didn't ask how it went, he didn't need to. Instead, he poured me a glass of water and said, You look lighter. I told her it was the last time, I replied. He nodded slowly. So, what now? Now, I said, walking over to my desk. I finished what I started. I opened my laptop and clicked on the folder labeled The Undoing. Inside were the files that represented 12 years of silence turned into evidence. Transfers, receipts, titles, my entire history of giving without recognition. I organized them into new subfolders: financial, property, messages. Each click felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Then, I opened a document I'd written months ago, a notarized letter revoking the joint ownership of the Naperville house. I printed it, signed my name, and sealed it in an envelope. You wanted me out of the picture, I whispered. Let's see how you live without it.
I didn't cry.
I didn't even tremble. The act of taking back what was mine felt less like revenge and more like gravity finally working in my favor. As evening fell, the room grew dim. The city lights blinked on one by one, reflections glinting off the glass. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Kira? The voice was familiar but cautious. Ramona?
I asked. Yes, sweetheart.
I saw the posts. I heard what your mom told Malik's family. If you want to set the record straight, I'll help you. I sat back, letting her words settle. Ramona was my father's sister, the only one who'd ever treated me like more than an obligation. I don't want to fight, I said. I just want the truth to breathe. She exhaled softly. Then start letting it out. Stop letting them write your story. I looked at the folder glowing on my computer screen and felt the tension leave my body. I'm not asking them to love me anymore, I said quietly. I'm asking them to stop lying about who I am. Ramona's voice softened. That's a good start, honey. You finally sound like yourself. When the call ended, I stood by the window, watching the traffic lights change color, thinking about the family I had tried to fix and the one I was building now, with Malik, with honesty, with boundaries. For the first time in years, the silence in my home didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I had drawn the line, but they weren't done crossing it. 10 days passed after that brunch, long enough for the emotions to cool but not disappear. It was a different kind of quiet now, not the emptiness of loss, but the stillness that comes before action. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at my desk while the city yawned awake outside the window. Malik had already left for work, leaving behind the faint smell of his aftershave and a note on the counter that read, "Don't let them take another piece of you." I opened my laptop and stared at the folder labeled The Undoing. Every file inside was a reminder of the years I'd mistaken silence for peace. It was time to finish what I'd started. The to-do list I'd written days earlier sat next to my keyboard. One by one, I read the tasks aloud like a prayer. Revoke joint ownership. Cancel automatic transfers. Disable medical billing line. Each click of the mouse felt surgical. I wasn't angry anymore. I was precise. The kind of clarity that only comes when you stop hoping for change. I opened my bank app, entered the familiar password, and hovered over the standing order I'd created 12 years ago. Calhoun household, recurring transfer, $30,000. The same number that had drained me month after month. I clicked edit. Before deleting it, I made one last transfer. My finger hesitated, but only for a moment. The note field blinked, waiting. I typed, "Final payment." From the one you thought had nothing. When I hit confirm, the page refreshed, and just like that, the cycle ended. No more invisible funding. No more quiet sacrifices disguised as love. I deleted the recurring wire setup, then exhaled. It felt like stepping out of a locked room I hadn't realized was suffocating me. For a long minute, I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then my phone buzzed. It was the family group chat, one I hadn't muted yet out of some ridiculous sentimentality. "Vera, anyone seen the electric bill? It's past due, super weird." A few typing dots appeared, then disappeared. No one answered. I typed slowly. "You all wanted independence from me. Now you have it." I didn't expect a reply. For hours, nothing. Then, at 3:46 p.m., my mother's name flashed on the screen. "Henrietta, this is petty. You're punishing us for nothing." I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. For once, I didn't feel my pulse race. I simply locked the phone and set it face down. That silence, the kind I used to fear, was finally mine to control. But peace never lasts long in a family that feeds on control. That evening, while washing dishes, I felt the weight of something unfinished pressing on me. I dried my hands, grabbed my phone, and dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice clipped. "So, you've decided to call?" "Yes," I said. "To tell you something clearly for once." A pause. "You could have handled this privately, Kira. We're family." "You mean the kind of family that tells my husband's mother I'm unstable?" "Don't twist things," she snapped. "I was defending you." "Defending me?" I repeated, letting out a low breath. "By telling her I can't function without him? By saying he keeps me grounded, like I'm a child who needs supervision?" Her tone hardened. "You're too sensitive." I was making conversation. I laughed softly. "You always call it that, conversation, concern, advice. But what you never call it is what it really is, control." There was a beat of silence, then her voice rose. "You think you can talk to me like this after everything I've done for you? You mean the house you live in? The bills I paid? The food on your table?" "That house is mine," she snapped. "Your father and I built that home from nothing." I kept my voice even. "You built a house. I bought the one you're standing in." She fell silent. I could hear her breath quicken through the receiver. "I'm selling it," I said finally, "within 90 days. "You wouldn't dare," she hissed. "I would. It's under my name now. Always has been. You just lived in it like I wasn't real." "You ungrateful child." "Maybe," I said softly, "but at least I'm finally honest about it." The call ended abruptly.
I didn't hang up, she did.
For the first time, I didn't cry after one of our fights. I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, feeling something that wasn't guilt, it was relief. Later that night, Malik came home, his expression cautious. He always read me well. One look, and he knew something had shifted. "You did it, didn't you?" he asked. I called her. He nodded slowly, setting his bag down. "How'd it go?" She said the house was hers. I said, almost laughing. I told her it never was. He crossed the room and pulled me into his arms. For a moment, I let my forehead rest against his chest, breathing in that familiar scent of soap and city air. "You've done enough saving," he whispered. "It's okay to let some things go unrescued." That sentence sank into me deeper than he probably intended. I wasn't saving them anymore. I was saving myself. I felt tears prick my eyes. Not the old kind, born from pain, but new ones, lighter somehow. The release of years of carrying what wasn't mine. We ate dinner together, leftovers from the night before. I laughed more than I expected to. When he went to bed, I stayed up, unable to sleep, thinking about how every woman I'd ever admired had one thing in common. They all knew when to stop explaining themselves. Just past midnight, I drafted a letter addressed to the family lawyer. I read it twice before sealing it. "Dear Mr. Walters, enclosed, please find the updated property documents transferring full ownership to me, Kira Rain. As discussed, proceed with the sale of the Naperville property within 90 days. Include the enclosed statement with the notice." The statement was short, printed on clean white paper. The title at the top read, "Accountability." And beneath it, one final line. "Since you never asked for the truth, here it is." At the very bottom, in smaller print, "You said I had nothing. Now I say you have nothing of mine." When I sealed the envelope and placed it by the door for morning delivery, I felt an unfamiliar calm, like something had been returned to its rightful place. I turned off the lights and stood by the window. The city glowed in patches of amber. Somewhere out there, my mother was probably pacing, Vera was probably texting, and the storm I'd tried so hard to avoid was beginning to form. But this time, I wasn't afraid. I had drawn the line, and for once, I intended to keep it. I had drawn the line, but they weren't done crossing it. And in my family, when boundaries are set, someone always makes it their mission to bulldoze through them. It started with a phone call. I was in the middle of organizing my inbox when my realtor's name popped up on my screen. I had listed the Naperville house just 3 days prior, officially transferring full ownership under my name and initiating the process to sell it. "Hey, Kira," she said, her voice tight. "You didn't tell me anyone was still living there." My stomach tensed. Why? The lockbox was found open this morning. I came by to drop off the new brochures, and the front door was unlocked. I checked the cameras. 2 women entered yesterday afternoon. One looked like your sister. The other had gray hair. I closed my laptop slowly. Did they take anything? Nothing obvious. But the safe in the bedroom closet? It's gone. There was a long pause where I couldn't speak. My throat had gone dry. "That safe held personal items," I said finally. "I didn't authorize anyone to be there." "I figured," she replied. "Want me to call the police?" "No," I said. "Not yet." After the call ended, I sat perfectly still for almost 5 minutes. Then, without saying anything, I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. My hand shook so slightly, I barely noticed, but the tremor was there, rage simmering beneath the surface. I opened my security app, pulled up the video footage she mentioned, and hit play. There they were. Vera, in her usual sunglasses like she was sneaking into a club, and Mom, Henrietta, with that familiar purse she never left home without. They stepped in like they owned the place, no hesitation. They didn't just take the safe. They went through drawers, rifled through closets. Vera paused at the hallway mirror, fixed her hair, and then walked directly into the bedroom. I fast-forwarded.
Then I saw it.
They opened the wedding gift safe. The one Malik had handed Mom with such hope in his eyes. Envelopes full of cards and generous cash gifts from friends and colleagues, tucked inside as a symbolic gesture of goodwill and unity. That safe was meant to hold the start of a new chapter. They took it. Not out of necessity. Not out of desperation. but because they felt entitled. The footage ended with them walking out with the safe in a small rolling suitcase. No urgency. No shame. I leaned back, heart pounding, and texted Malik.
We need to talk.
Before I could overthink it, I dialed my attorney. He picked up on the first ring. I need to file a cease and desist, I said calmly. And I want to report unauthorized entry and theft. He asked for the video, the ownership documents, and a timeline. I sent it all. An hour later, Mom called. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail instead. Kira, you're blowing this out of proportion. That money should have come to us anyway. You're making a scene over what we all know you would have given us eventually. I listened to the message twice. The tone was all too familiar, blame masked as concern, control wrapped in maternal authority. The rest of the day passed in quiet bursts, emails with my lawyer, a copy of the formal letter drafted and ready for delivery, and a sense of exhaustion that settled deep into my bones. That evening, I got a text from Ramona. Just saw Vera's post. You okay? I opened Instagram. Vera had posted a photo of a journal and a coffee mug with a caption that read, "It's sad when people hide behind lawyers to punish their own family. But growth is quiet."
Growth.
That was rich. I screenshotted the post and replied to Ramona. They broke into the house. Took the wedding safe. Legal steps are in motion. Her response came back fast. They're digging their own grave. You're just watching the dirt fly. I smiled at that. Something about Ramona's blunt honesty made the sting feel less sharp. Later that night, Malik and I watched the footage together. He didn't say anything at first, just shook his head, jaw tight. When it ended, he looked at me and said, "They don't care about losing you. They just care about losing access to what you gave them." I nodded. They don't fear absence. They fear deprivation. I stayed up past midnight drafting a statement for my legal team. It wasn't long or full of legal jargon. They were warned. They chose to break in anyway. This isn't a matter of hurt feelings. It's a matter of violation. I'm not angry. I'm done. I didn't feel dramatic.
I felt done.
The next morning, I confirmed the final listing date for the house with the realtor. No delays. No negotiations. Moving day came quietly. The neighbors filmed it, of course. In the age of smartphones and nosy curiosity, it was inevitable. There was Vera, dragging 2 suitcases out to the curb. Henrietta carried a box-marked kitchen, her posture rigid. They didn't look at the house once as they left. I watched it later that night. Ramona had sent me the video with the message. Well, that's that. I didn't share the footage. I didn't gloat, but I watched it one more time, frame by frame. They left with bags. I left with my peace. They thought they could take everything and walk away. But I hadn't even started revealing what was mine. 2 weeks later, I found myself standing outside my cousin Lydia's home, clutching a store-bought pie I'd nearly left on the counter. Malik was beside me, holding the keys to the car, but making no move to leave. "I can come in with you," he offered gently. I shook my head. "You already know how this goes. If I walk in with backup, they'll act like I'm starting a war. This time, I'm just here to listen." "Are you sure you're not here to speak?" I looked at him and smiled faintly. Let's just see what happens. The memorial dinner for my father was a predictable affair. Candlelight, catered food, and enough cheap wine to blur the sharpness of forced smiles. I hadn't seen most of these cousins in years, and the ones I did recognize had perfected the polite nods and vague small talk that coated every surface like wax. Vera was already holding court near the fireplace, sipping a sparkling drink and laughing too loud at something a man in a fleece vest had said. When she caught sight of me, her smile froze for a half second, just long enough for me to see it. Then she waved, like nothing had ever broken. Henrietta was in the dining room, fussing with a napkin that didn't need adjusting. She didn't greet me with a hug, just a nod, as if I were a distant friend attending out of obligation. I kept my coat on a moment longer, surveying the room. Every corner was filled with the scent of something sweet and false, store-bought cookies, maybe, or old perfume covering anxiety. Dinner was served in 2 long tables pushed together, plastic chairs lining both sides. I sat near the middle, not close enough to be at the head, not far enough to be dismissed. Vera stood as soon as the last plate hit the table. Forks clinked to a stop. "I just want to say," she began, eyes glossy, "that Dad meant everything to us. And no matter how far we drift, blood keeps us tied." That's what he believed. A few heads nodded. Someone mumbled, "Amen." Henrietta added softly, "Kira's here with us, too. That means something." There was the grab at narrative. The attempt to pull me into a scene I hadn't written, hadn't agreed to perform in. I felt the gaze of several cousins shift toward me, curious, confused, probably wondering why I hadn't been seen at the old house, why I hadn't posted any photos, why my name only came up when someone needed money. Before I could open my mouth, Ramona stood. She had been quiet the whole evening, sipping water, listening. But when she pushed back her chair, the room fell still. Even Vera blinked. "You're all clapping for someone who didn't pay a cent for this room," Ramona said calmly, looking straight at Vera. "Because she never had to."
Kira did.
"For years." A ripple passed through the air. Someone set their wine glass down too hard. "She's the one who paid the mortgage on the house you all brag about. She's the one who paid for Henrietta's medical bills, for Dad's surgeries, for Vera's failed yoga dream. And she did it without asking for applause." A gasp escaped from someone down the table. Ramona continued, voice low but firm. "You let her carry everything, then turned around and told the world she was a spoiled dependent." Vera's mouth opened, but no sound came. I stood, heart pounding but voice steady. "And while we're sharing," I said, pulling out my phone, "they listed my house for sale behind my back." I tapped the screen, opened the file Malik had helped me prepare, and turned it toward the group. The title transfer. The false listing agreement. Vera's forged signature. "You listed a house that didn't belong to you," I said directly to Vera. "A home I bought under my name, and you tried to sell it like it was yours." Henrietta looked down at her plate. Vera turned pale. "Why would you?" someone started to say. "I don't need anyone here to defend me," I said. "But I won't let them keep lying." No one clapped. No one spoke. It was the kind of silence that only truth can make, a vacuum that pulls the air out of the room. Vera stood abruptly and left. Her heels clicked sharply against the tile floor, then faded into the hallway. Henrietta remained seated, still not meeting my eyes. I didn't stay for dessert. Outside, Ramona joined me at the car, while Malik started the engine. The cold air helped clear the heat in my face. "Why now?" I asked her.
She didn't hesitate.
Because silence was the only thing keeping them powerful. I nodded slowly. "You always knew?" "I knew enough," she said. "But knowing and doing aren't the same. Tonight I chose to do." On the drive home, Malik reached over and squeezed my hand. I leaned back into the seat, watching the street lights blur past. "Did I humiliate them?" I asked softly. He glanced at me, then turned his eyes back to the road.
"No."
"You told the truth. They humiliated themselves." When we pulled into the garage, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen. Vera's Instagram gone. Account deleted. I set the phone down. Some battles are best ended in silence. I didn't erase the past. I rewrote what came next. 3 mornings had passed since the dinner. I hadn't heard a word from Vera or my mother. Their silence wasn't surprising. It was tactical. That's how they moved, withdrawal followed by reinvention. And just as I expected, they didn't stay quiet long. I was on my way back from a quick grocery run when Malik called from the kitchen. "Kira," he said, his voice unusually calm, "I think you need to see this." I walked into the living room, bag still in hand, and saw him holding his phone out. Henrietta's face filled the screen, framed in soft lighting, eyes unusually glassy. The video title read, "To my daughter." "Is this new?" I asked. He nodded. "Posted an hour ago. Vera already reposted it." I set the groceries down. The video opened with Henrietta sitting on the same couch from the Naperville house, the throw pillow behind her too fluffed to look casual. Her tone was practiced gentle. Kira, my sweet girl, she began. If you're watching this, I want you to know I'm sorry. Truly sorry. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. Pride kept me from saying it sooner. But you're my daughter. And you always will be. I didn't blink. She went on about growth, about how families hurt one another but find their way back, about how the world doesn't understand what mothers carry in silence. It's not perfect, Malik said, watching me closely. But it's heartfelt. No, I said flatly. It's a play. He gave me a look. I didn't elaborate.
Not yet.
2 hours later, a message from Ramona lit up my phone. Found this buried in the family cloud. Thought you should see it before they delete it. Check the metadata. This was recorded days ago. Attached was a video file. The same couch. The same outfit. But this wasn't the published video. It was the rehearsal. Henrietta sat stiffly, reading from a notebook in her lap. Make sure to say you were wrong about the wedding, she muttered, then paused. No, wait. Too direct. Say misunderstood. Softer. Vera's voice off camera. Mom, try to smile more when you say her name. You look upset. Henrietta adjusted her posture. Kira, my sweet girl, is that too much? My hands curled around the phone. This was never an apology. It was damage control. A curated confession built for applause. I didn't respond to Ramona's message right away. I didn't forward the clip. I sat with it, let it stew, let it confirm everything I already knew. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I opened my laptop and uploaded the rehearsal video to a Dropbox folder. The title read, Forgiveness or Performance. No public call-out. No hashtags. Just a message sent quietly to a few family members. In case you wanted to know what forgiveness looks like from a script. No follow-up. No fanfare. Let the truth sit where it lands. The next morning, I got a call from an old college friend. Hey, Kira. Have you seen Vera's page? No, I said, already opening Instagram. The influencer-style photos were still there, but the tone had shifted. A pinned post at the top, taking a break from mental clarity and healing. Please respect my privacy. Comments had been limited. 2 brands I knew she worked with had removed their tags from her posts. Malik walked by, coffee in hand. He paused when he saw my face. She posted the video, didn't she? No, I said. But she lost control of the story. He nodded. Looks like the truth didn't need a stage. Just light. Henrietta's fallout came quieter. A friend of hers from church reached out to Ramona. They're asking her to step down from the women's retreat leadership, she said. Too much chatter. Too much drama. No one banned her. But no one defended her either. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt released. The next day, the realtor sent me the final paperwork. The Naperville house had closed. I signed the documents in my apartment, barefoot, with soft jazz playing in the background. Malik brought me a glass of orange juice as I sealed the last envelope. Going to see the house one last time? He asked. No, I said. Let it be someone else's beginning. Ramona dropped by that afternoon, holding a bouquet of simple white daisies. Don't get the wrong idea, she said, handing them over. This isn't a peace offering. This is a celebration. I smiled. You always did know the difference. We sat on the balcony for a while, watching the street below. People walked by, laughing, talking. I hadn't felt this weightless in years. That night, I went through my contacts and blocked both Vera and Henrietta on every platform. Not out of rage. Not spite. Just necessity. I didn't need to be pulled back into their cycle. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's not pretending you weren't hurt. It's choosing not to let it happen again. I didn't erase the past. I rewrote what came next. And in doing so, I uncovered something I hadn't realized I was still searching for. 3 months had passed since the dinner, since the final letters, since Vera's online retreat into digital silence, and my mother's sudden absence from every family function she once ruled. There was no drama left to clean up. Just the remnants of something I used to think was a family. It was late afternoon when I visited Ramona. She'd asked me to stop by for tea, and something in her voice made me say yes without hesitation. Malik offered to drive me, but I told him I needed to do this one alone. Her home hadn't changed, same navy blue shutters, same creaky porch swing. When I walked in, the smell of lemon tea and old wood immediately wrapped around me like a familiar quilt. "I have something for you," she said after I'd kicked off my shoes and sat down. She handed me a small wooden box, weathered and tied with a fraying ribbon. "Your father gave me this a few weeks before he passed. Told me to keep it safe and give it to you when I thought you were ready." My hands paused over the knot. "What did he say was in it?" "He didn't say," she answered. "But he had that look. The one he wore when he was holding something sacred." I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, the edges worn, the cover faded but intact. I opened to the first page. Kira never asked for recognition. That's why she deserves everything. My throat tightened. Each entry was in his handwriting, notes, memories, sometimes just a line or two about the day. There were sketches of the backyard garden, stories about when I was 5 and insisted on wearing boots in July, and lines that spoke of pride so deep it was never meant for public display. She never saw these pages, I realized. My mother never found this journal. If she had, she would have burned it. Or worse, rewritten it. I didn't cry because I needed validation. I cried because I had finally received the kind of love that wasn't conditional. The next morning, I went back to the library downtown where I'd been volunteering. It was my 3rd week leading a financial literacy course for girls aged 13 to 17, most of them from homes where money was either never talked about or only ever yelled about. There was one girl, Layla, who always stayed behind after class. She reminded me of myself, smart but silent, always watching. That day, she lingered again, tapping her pen against her notebook. "How did you learn all this?" she asked. "I didn't grow up with it," I said. "I had to teach myself, because the people who were supposed to show me either didn't know how or didn't want me to know." She nodded, then whispered, "My mom says I should marry someone rich so I don't have to worry about it." I leaned in. "Your mom's not entirely wrong. But here's the truth. Money doesn't fix everything. What it gives you is choice. And that's something no one should take from you." After class, Malik was waiting out front with 2 iced teas. He handed me one and kissed my cheek. "Another future millionaire trained?" he teased. "Let's hope so," I smiled, sipping. We drove home in comfortable silence. The city rolled past outside the window, gray, gritty, alive. That evening, as I went through a stack of mail on the kitchen counter, one envelope stood out. No return address. Inside was a folded card that read "Family Reunion, Saturday at 3 p.m. A handwritten note below. "Hope you're ready to come home. Mom misses you." I stared at it for a long time. Malik walked over and read it too. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said. I just didn't expect to feel nothing. I didn't tear it up. I didn't throw it away. I walked to my study, opened the journal I'd started months ago, the one titled Unsent but Heard, and slipped the card inside. Then I picked up a pen and wrote my reply on a clean page. "I wish you well, but I'm not returning to a version of me I had to burn to survive." I didn't send it. I didn't need to. Some messages are meant to be released, not delivered. 2 weeks later, Malik and I went for a walk by the lake. The fall air was crisp, the leaves along the path a mosaic of gold and red. "I've been thinking," I said, slipping my hand into his, "about the kind of parent I want to be." He squeezed my fingers. "Oh yeah. I want to love our kids without needing them to prove anything. I want them to know they're enough just by being." He smiled. "You already do that, with every word you say, with how you show up. You already are that kind of person." I stopped walking and looked out over the water. "Maybe that's what this whole thing was for," I whispered. "So I'd know the difference."
He didn't say anything.
He didn't need to. The following month, I stood behind a podium at a women's finance conference. The room was packed, dozens of women from different backgrounds, some young, some retired, all listening. I spoke not just about money, but about value, about boundaries, about building a life you don't need to escape from. At the end, someone asked me how I stayed hopeful through it all. I answered simply, I used to think sacrifice earned love. Now I know love is never debt. It's a gift freely given. And finally, I've given it to myself. Sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't caused by strangers. They're carved quietly by the people we love most. Kira's story reminds us that silence isn't always peace, and loyalty shouldn't cost us our dignity. So here's a question. If you had to choose between being loved and being respected, which would you pick? Let us know in the comments